There's this terrible idea that Saint Seiya fights aren't good and are just spammy. No, they're not as dynamic and high-flying or have big explosions as other shows, but you don't need to zap around, vanish, and punch through things for action to be good. Just engaging, tells a story, have emotional connections, have twists, and a good flow, among other things, and in my opinion, Saint Seiya has those. So, here are my top 15 fights in the franchise. Honorable mentions to Dragon Koga vs. Saturn from Omega, Seiya vs. Abel, Legend of the Crimson Youth, Seiya vs. Apollo, Overture, Seiya vs. Brontos, Saint Seiya Episode G, Requiem, Aspros vs. Defros, Lost Canvas, Seiya vs. Sigurd, Episode G, Assassin, and GodClothShango Camus vs. Yoga, Saint Seiya Episode G, Assassin. Now, 15. The Bronze Saints vs. Poseidon. I really enjoyed having all the Bronze Saints come together in gold cloth, pushing themselves to the limit to face a literal god. 14. Lost Canvas Pisces vs. Judge Miners. Pisces Elbithka is voiced by Johnny Young Boss in the dub, and that's enough for me. Also, the fight looks fantastic, with a gold saint having a short but nice background and dying as warrior. 13. Dragon Shiryu vs. Black Dragon. Anime. This fight has perhaps my favorite song in the whole series, which helps bring together one of the most anime fights ever. Cool long-haired anime man fights an evil doppelganger in a fight filled with blood and animal symbols, acting almost weirdly real, with a bit of choppy old animation, ending in a sad tale of friendship. 12. Shaka versus Saga, Shura, and Camus. Anime. You know, I'm not scared to bring up potentially negative things, but I prefer to look positive. But honestly, you know who's awesome? 95% of Dragon Ball fans and Saint Seiya fans. But I have seen them say that 5% say the dumbest things. And when they are a fan of both series, sometimes the dumbness of those comes together and make a person whose brain is barely functional. And one thing I heard from one of those guys is the reason Saint Seiya has almost no filler fights like Dragon Ball is because Saint Seiya fights aren't interesting enough. As someone that read the manga and watched the anime, that's peak don't talk to Saint Seiya fans, we never watched Saint Seiya. There was a ton of action filler in the Sanctuary arc, and there was a little bit in the Hades arc. And this next fight is peak filler action, and it's amazing. It's awesome from the look, the techniques, how the moves were integrated, the animation, the pacing, the emotional death scene, all coming together for a great fight scene. Seiya versus Alderbrand. The first fight of the Sanctuary arc. This fight had atmosphere, a great display of what is to come, underdog going against impossible odds, and an understanding of the great power of the Gold Saint and the Seventh Sense. Camus versus Titan. These two characters almost don't even move in this fight, and it's awesome. Two powerful warriors, one with the power of ice and the other primordial water. One unarmed, the other dual swords, just trying to outthink and counter the other and overcome each of each other's hexes, and debating the value of humanity. Lost Canvas Cancer versus Thanatos. This fight is on a lot of people's top 5, and I can easily see why. The Cancer Saint fell from another dimension, stared down a god without fear, and immediately attacked. Cancer gets trapped in a chess dimension and forced to fight chess pieces, showing the power of a god, not just in pure force, but reality warping. The context of this fight makes the god look powerful, and the Cancer look badass. With this, he is one of, if not most people's favorite Cancer saint. Shun versus Aphrodite. This was the moment we really saw who Shun was. Someone who struggled with how people see him, but not changing, but understanding that sometimes you have to do what you have to do, unleashing his true power and getting one of the few legit victories in the Sanctuary arc. 7. Leo Ayolia versus Hyperion. I love this fight because it's kind of a great nod to Alderbrand and Seiya fight. A warrior fighting for what's right against an incredibly powerful enemy. It sets up the Goat Saints on underdogs, for they are facing ancient gods who surpass them in almost every way, even armor. To win, they will need to be true saints and fight for justice, love, and create miracles. Leo and Shaka versus Dimension Iapis. I love this fight for two reasons: seeing two Ghost Saints fight by side and the spectacle. A fantastic display of power and tragedy, fighting inside a universe with an enemy who wields entire planets, fighting a entity whose hate for humanity derives from the tragedy of their child, Prometheus. The Titan gets vastly more powerful from sacrificing everything he holds to his heart, becoming a demon. This fight is fantastic. Shejima versus Shaka. I love this fight for about the same reason as I like Camus and the Titan fight. This is two characters standing pretty much completely still, throwing techniques at each other, and it's the hypest shit ever. One of the most powerful goes facing off against his predecessor to save the future bearer of the Virgo cloth, in a colorful display of cosmic power. Shaka versus Iki. Another one on fans' top 10 list for good reason. Is perhaps the longest fight in the series, and if you have noticed, Shaka is on here a lot. He simply has the best fights in the series, in my opinion, because his techniques are beautiful, fitting, and interesting. And at the end of this battle, he develops as a character, growing his sense of justice. 3. Dragon Shiryu versus Shura. This is the first fight that almost made me tear up when I first saw it, particularly the ending. Shiryu ascending to the sky in a suicidal move as his master senses and cries, respecting the will of a warrior and why he's fighting. He gives him both his armor and his weapons out of respect. Number 2. Camus versus Yoga. This was almost number 1 because it really encapsulates the series. The interpersonal connection between student and master. This is a story of duty. Every moment has emotional weight to it. In the end, the master would teach the student one last thing and surpass him. Number 1. Leo Ayolia versus Hyperion, third battle. Why is this number 1? I think this kind of has everything. It has connection between two opponents that was built up in 3 fights. The fight was beautiful, great and deadly techniques from Hyperion. Both characters looked strong. Ayolia showed his great combat intelligence and creativity. How he was able to counter was interesting, and by the end, Hyperion respected Ayolia and Ayolia Hyperion. And when Pontos appeared in his water form to resurrect and control Hyperion, we find out he's been pretty much nothing but a literal puppet, yet Hyperion cut him down to pieces, telling him he will not ruin the honor of their battle. Well, that's my list. Tell me yours and please remember to like, sub, and hit the bell. Later.